Alright, you have a situation. You have an egg. Do you A, let the egg naturally hatch and live a loving life, or smash it open with a blunt object? Chances are, if you're raising a chicken, the answer is, of course, to let the chicken naturally hatch. Why are trans people a different situation? Well, that's what this video is about, so stay tuned. So for those unfamiliar, egg is a slang term in trans communities for a trans person that doesn't know they're trans yet. The analogy works because the chicken is inside the egg, and eventually they hatch out. It's a nice analogy that's used a bit poorly sometimes. So you've probably seen egg memes, and I think a lot of them are really funny. However, it unintentionally created this culture of making it everyone's sworn duty to break everyone's egg. Now, I feel like that missed the point of the fun of egg memes. The fun of egg memes was the self-satire, I think. The like, ha, me doing this, still cis though, ha, that kind of thing. I think that was the fun of it. But I think when you start pointing at other people and calling them eggs, I don't know, it gets a bit iffy. Now, if you're with friends and you're chill with saying stuff like that, that's super fun, good time, perfectly viable, good joke. But there's a funny side effect to it. You might have noticed. If you, for example, have experiences like me, if someone points at you and says, you're an egg, that has a lot of implications. One, the implication is A, you're somehow in denial about something, and B, they believe you're transgender. Now, if you haven't really cycled through those thoughts before, a bit terrifying. It's a lot to think about at once. Being transgender is a big thing to discover, right? It affects life in lots of many ways. And having someone just tell you that you're apparently trans can be very confronting, both for people that are actually cis and people that do end up being trans someday. So I offer an alternative, lovely audience. I suggest letting eggs crack on their own. However, we're not just going to leave them alone. Instead, show that being trans is okay around people, and then the eggs can naturally hatch in a safe and stable environment. We want eggs to feel safe, right? The way for more eggs to crack is not using blunt objects to destroy them. Otherwise, there's no trans person left. No, we have to create a safe environment for trans people to hatch into. Otherwise, well, fear is a strong thing, and society perpetuates a type of fear that being trans somehow locks you into a lifetime of misery. But that's not how it works. A lot of us know that. Being trans is just a simple part of life. Just a small little part of it. It's not something massively all-encompassing. That'd be ridiculous. Instead, being trans is just a little part of life. And discovering that is a special thing. It's an empowering but scary moment. And to have someone take that away from you can be a bit confronting, I won't lie. I remembered I would say some egg memes later on, because my transition's a bit weird. I figured I was young, then I got too scared and I backed out a little bit as a teenager, then I walked back in. But trans culture has changed a lot since I did all three of those things. And egg memes really surprised me. I think I saw roughly when they were a mainstream-ish thing within communities. And I guess the main takeaway I got from it was it felt very, what's the word? It felt like everyone's like specifically, you know, when like doctors, you know, tell you the thing that you need, like a type of medicine or that kind of thing. It's like when your friend tells you, like you cough a little bit and they're like, oh, you need this medication. And it's like, you shouldn't really diagnose people when you're not a doctor. Now, obviously in situations where it's just a simple thing like, oh, you have a headache. Oh, here's headache medication. That's fine. It's more when they say you have a really specific thing. Now, I think transition in general is over-medicalized as far as like an explanation of like how it works. There's a lot of social components and things unrelated to doctors, but I digress. Point is, when you end up looking a trans person in the eye and doing egg memes, that's fine because you're both knowingly trans, you're okay with it. You probably have talked about beforehand. But what is an egg? If you're claiming that they're transgender, that's a lot for them to take in instantly. And there's two scenarios like I mentioned earlier. However, I'm mostly going to talk about the scenario of even if they are transgender, because it's a trans channel. And you see, a thing I felt when looking at egg memes was a almost like gut reaction to deny it. It felt like it took me closer into the closet than anything. It was really strange that it happened to me because I've been wearing girls' clothes for who knows how long. I guess in the egg framework, I was a prime candidate to be called an egg. However, everyone that doesn't transition for some time, there's reasons, right? It can be, in my case, it was safety around my household. For other people, it can be all sorts of things. Not being ready, wanting to sort out some other stuff first. We can't rush these things. I understand that when we do eventually transition, we go, gee, wish I did it earlier. But the hard thing to accept is that we transitioned when we could. Me saying, oh, I should have transitioned younger, that's kind of ignoring the context and why I didn't transition when I was younger, right? You have to just know that everyone is at a different pace. You should, if you have a friend that might be trans, just show that you're in support of the trans community, or if you're trans yourself, describe things that make you happy, like, oh, I try these hormone things and like my emotions feel really nice, that kind of thing. Don't do it in a way that's direct at them, but show your own happiness. And if something you say sparks something within them, that's fine. But don't do it with the pure intention of catching them out and discovering their egginess. That'd be ridiculous. Here's a fun example. So recently, thanks to some comments and me internalizing some stuff, I believe I have the thing called dyscalculia, which is where you can't count properly. So a reason I kind of denied any form of neurodivergence for years, to be honest, is because I used to know someone that kept pointing at me and being like, yeah, there's nothing neurotypical about this, pointing at me and that kind of thing. And it's just like, I feel like that made me not feel comfortable with that identity. I don't know if identity is the right word. I'm pretty new to neurodivergent stuff. But I found that when people pressure you to be something, it does the same thing that cishet society did. It tries to push you into a box to conform, and that doesn't feel good. Even if the box is the one you would have picked anyway, it doesn't feel good for someone to force you to be someone else. You have to just let yourself be you. And you can't let someone push you into something. Now, if someone suggests something like that, you can go, oh, okay, I'll look some stuff up, see if it aligns with who I am. That's fine. However, it's a bit assumptuous of people to point at you and say, oh, you're this. That goes for gender, neurodivergence, sexuality, everything, right? It's a bit of a strange thing to do to people. Oh, you're this. Why would you say that to someone? The last major thing I'll address with this topic is obviously an irony in a lot of my content being very, well, I mean, one of my most popular videos is called Click This to Become a Girl. And I'm just covering my bases here. The reason I think this video is fine is the video says to click here to become a girl. It's not forcing you to click it. I think stuff like that's fine because like it's just sitting there. And like if you click it, have a revelation from it, cool. If you don't, you click off it, all's good. I think the way we need to approach encouraging more people to feel comfortable to come out isn't to smash the egg and force them out, because that's not much different from outing someone, unfortunately. And outing is a very, very taboo thing in the queer community. However, for some reason, calling someone an egg isn't. Why? It's kind of like how in some sexuality spaces, that's a really strange way for me to word that, but in gay communities, you'll like see someone of a certain fashion or look, and then someone will be like, yeah, gay. And it's like, you can't really determine that from like an impression. Yeah, people can have stereotypes, right? But like, I walk around in Doc Martens all the time. That's a lesbian stereotype, but I'm very straight. Everyone's varied. We can't determine things based on outer appearances. So if you take anything away from this, just understand that there's lots of eggs out there. More than we could probably comprehend. However, there's also a lot of cis people. It's easy to be well, I guess immersed in our little bubble of being friends with lots of trans people on the internet. However, just remember there's a lot of cis people, there's a lot of trans people. And I think if we approach everything with kindness, have fun jokes that people are comfortable having jokes with, and just show that it's safe to be yourself, then I think a lot of eggs will hatch and live wonderful lives. However, if you call someone an egg without their permission, and they seem defensive about it, don't view that as evidence, quote unquote, that they're so totally trans and in denial. Because no one likes being told they're in denial of anything. I feel like that slows down the time it'll take for them to come out by like a couple of years. No exaggeration. So instead of being like, haha, so eggy, that's an egg, that's an eggy little egg, or something, instead, you're allowed to bring up like, oh yeah, I transitioned recently and I found this kind of thing really helpful for me. If the person comes to you and describes feelings that sound like dysphoria, if they're like, oh, I'm not really feeling comfortable in these clothes, or like, you know, like I'm a bit jealous of like clothes that girls get to wear. If they say something like that, instead of saying, haha, egg, instead, I guess ask, why do you feel that way? If you want to, you can be a girl if you want, but if you don't want to, that's okay too. Because identity's diverse. Someone saying something that sounds obvious, like, oh, I would love to wear skirts, dang. Yeah, maybe that sounds obviously trans femme. However, this could be someone that's identifying as a femboy. Maybe gender fluid, transgender, who knows? Maybe they're cis and they just like some feminine clothes. We can't really decide based on a couple of sentences that are now meme tropes. Just remember, life isn't 4chan or Reddit or whatever, okay? Normal part of things, right? And there's nothing wrong with processing that some people are different, some people approach things differently. And hey, if someone you thought was an egg comes out to you, I ask you politely, do not start your sentence with, I told you so. That's not very nice. Unless you know the friend very well and you know they're okay with that. Context is key. However, I think it's important at the end of the day for us to just let people be them and be accepting of any outcome. Whether they're trans, cis, femboy, gender fluid, non-binary, or anything else, right? We have to be accepting of others. And that includes all possible avenues of life, not just ours. It's easy to see ourselves in a lot of things that aren't really about us. I mean, often we'll see something vaguely trans-coded and in our hearts it feels like it's purely trans-based. But other people will see it differently. Similar to art, right? Art's subjective. And our interpretations of people, honestly, not any much more informed. It's okay. So, I hope this video was uplifting, hopeful, and if anyone watching this is like, oh, maybe I'm trans, or maybe I'm femboy, gender fluid, or cis, and like girls' clothes anyway, or maybe a trans mask is watching, all sorts of possibilities, non-binary people. If you feel like you might prefer to transition, then I have a couple of videos about transition, and I invite you to enjoy those if you are curious about the process. Just know that clicking on transgender videos doesn't lock you into being transgender. You can just look out of curiosity. And if you don't want to, then I hope you enjoy the rest of your scrolling, video watching, and other things. Well, that's all from me. So if you want to see more trans-related content, because that's the niche I do, then be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, check out our streams every week. We also have an ASMR channel, and much more. So, hope you enjoyed this video. I was a bit nervous about making this one because I think it's a bit of a tricky topic. Well, until next time, stay hydrated and know that you're valid.